Today's message from Reverend Christian Sorensen was recorded September 11th, 2016, and of course it's titled 9/11. Subtitled, Be the Lake and Not the Cup, and No Longer Be Afraid of What You Don't Know. Come visit us at seasidecenter.org or join us in Encinitas, California sometime, where always we have great music, a spirited message, and a joyful, loving, vibrant community that always awaits your presence.
Feel the joy, feel the peace, and the comfort of home, 'cause all are welcome here. Yes, all are welcome here.
Obviously, today is September 11th, and 15 years ago, I would say many of us in this room could say where we were, what it was we were doing when we saw what took place. And what took place changed the way our generation operates in this world with a sense of ease and comfort and grace. And I can remember growing up, I could never understand why my dad could always remember Pearl Harbor Day. December 7th, it was a day I had to memorize for a test question in my book in class, and I didn't get it. And after September 11th, I got it. I understood that things were never quite the same after that. And symbolically, the Twin Towers can represent inside of us, those two pillars or those two towers that are within us, the good and the not so good. The Mother Teresa, the Saddam Hussein, the light, the darkness. And, which one of those towers is going to rise from the ashes? Which one of those are you going to feed? Which one of those are you going to listen to and begin to see take form again in your life? It comes down to your choice on what you're going to do with what took place, because things happen in our life that just may not feel right. But you know what? If they happen, what's going on? But what happened that day is that a new meme was cast, a new vibration. And I've had people say, "And what's a meme?" The America vibration, that new level of being. It's like at one point when people thought the earth was flat, the earth was flat. And then when they realized the earth was round, it was no longer flat. There was a new meme. There was a new consciousness. There was a new awareness that was established. Well, on that day, what happened is all of a sudden, our country was beginning to be dictated by fear. That all of a sudden, decisions were based upon fear and protection and attack and defense. And we began to have to live with this heaviness that sat there because the tower we chose to honor began to look like that. Though what happened on that day was an amazing thing, if you remember how the world's heart opened up to us. All of a sudden, we had our enemies reaching out and saying, "America, just sorry, we love you. Oh my goodness, how could that have happened there?" But something happened. We went in a different direction with that, and that's what happened. And because of the fear that we were fed and they kept put in our face, we made choices. We choose to have given up some of our freedoms, some of our independence, our privacy. We're willing to give up our privacy and have stored our records, whether it's the phone or our web searches. We're willing, with TSA, before then you used to be able to get to the plane at the last minute, no problem, you get in. It's not like that anymore. And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. What I'm saying is that we were given a choice between these two towers as to what it is we were going to do with what was there. And we have lived under the onus of that fear and that terror for so long. And it's time for us to be able to work on forgiveness and to letting go and to moving forward with our life into that new kind of freedom, that new kind of self-expression. Yes. But as I work within my own heart and soul, what I kind of recognize is it's not as much for me having to forgive what took place on September 11th, 15 years ago. And Oprah Winfrey, one of the things she said is forgiveness is your ability to be able to say thank you for the experience, which I thought was pretty good. But I'm not able necessarily to move beyond that experience because there is so much inside of me that is still I don't know if angry is the right word, but to see our children be sent off to war and to come back just damage, I don't know if damage is the right word, but they come back without their innocence any longer. They come back with the memories and the terror and the conflicts. All of a sudden we are living under the heaviness of this. And so inside of me there is this continuous working. Forgiveness is what can, patch up the holes from the storms in consciousness. But when you're filled with the anger, it is a virus within your mind that takes away your peace. It is a virus that is continuously operating. The only way to eliminate it is with patience and forgiveness. And the forgiveness doesn't always make a lot of intellectual sense. The mind doesn't, hey, how can I forgive such a horrendous, heinous act? But you know what? It is about the heart and the soul that wants to be able to live with its freedom and its privacy and its expression and the soul expression without the kind of fear and concern of being able to stand up here and say something and all of a sudden without due cause be incarcerated. But times have changed. But what is happening is, what is it that we're feeding? Remember that, it's still fairly new. All of you probably heard it. It comes from the first people, the Native American nation of a kid who was all upset and angry and because of an alteration that he had, and he was talking to his grandfather. You remember this story? And the grandfather said, hey, calm down. I've been there too with the anger and the pain. And he said, how'd you do it, Grandpa? He said, well, it's like two wolves inside of me. Remember this one? Yep. One is, the wolf is angry and revengeful and hateful and just malicious and just nasty stuff. And the other one is love. It's caring. It's forgiveness. It's understanding. It's kindness. And the kid thought about it and said, and so which one wins? And the grandpa said, that's right. Whichever one you feed, right? Things happen, and there is anger, and new ways of being. But which one do you feed? Which one in your life, in particular issues? There was this another kid with the anger issues going on. And this morning's message isn't really about anger or forgiveness. I'm really going to try to get to a place of no separation as God's everywhere, even in the midst of September 11th. But it's everywhere because all of us are working. But this one kid has got the anger issues, and he went to find this teacher who was sitting in the woods against a tree, near the lake, beautiful spot. And he said, hey, my name's Ben. I'm just unhappy with life. I am miserable. I am angry. I'm not enjoying it. And he said, whoa, calm down. The kid said, but can you help me? Nobody's been able to help me. And that teacher thought about it and said, I'll tell you what, just go grab a cup of water out of the lake for me. So the kid brings back this cup of water in a couple of minutes. And the guy, he reaches into his satchel or his bag, and he pulls out a handful of salt, and he throws it in the water, and he kind of stirs it up and said, here, take a drink. The kid takes a sip and goes, oh, that's terrible. It tastes like salt, yuck. And the guy just laughed, it's kind of funny. So he gets up, and he walks down to the lake, and he takes a handful of salt again from his bag, and he throws it into the lake, and he watches it dissolve, and he pulls out his glass, he scoops up some water, and said, here, now drink. And the kid drinks and goes, wow, that tastes good. And he said, I'll tell you what, your anger is like that salt. The salt always tastes the same, but it's dependent on how strong it is as to what it's in. And I recommend that you work on expanding and not be the cup, but to be the lake. Hello. It's like, where are you taking your issues, your anger, your resentment, that stuff that got you wrong? Are you holding it inside of your mind and trying to heal it right here in this little space? Or am I going to drop it into that lake of the God consciousness? Am I going to drop it into that infinite level of possibilities that far exceeds my intellectual understanding because it makes no sense to forgive this situation? Am I going to move beyond, okay, this took place, I'm going to just stick it right here and I'm just going to leave it? Right? That's compartmentalizing. Spirituality is moving beyond the compartmentalization because God is in and through all things. It is everywhere, which means that what I need to do is be willing to move into those darker recesses, be willing to look at that anger issues, be willing to look at the upset, be willing to look at that new vibration or that frequency that is being fed in my life through my behavior and realize that I need to drop this behavior into something bigger than I am. I've got to be willing to take a look at, this enlightenment that Marshall was asking me about. It's like I sat with that enlightenment. What's enlightenment, Christian? That was a good one to throw at me last week, But enlightenment and wholeness is to be able to live without an anxiety towards those things that are different than you. Those things that seem to be not perfect. Those things that I don't understand. Can I sit there without an anxiousness and open up to the diversity of the possibility of what is being offered to me through this experience? Because we are living in a diverse country. We are blessed. And how many of the gifts are you open to, are you able to receive from various ways in which you didn't know? I got to tell you, I didn't really realize that this week was the beginning of Hispanic History Month. I won't ask you if you knew that. But the Latinos are a very influential part of our culture. And here's a wonderful short minute and a half video from one of our Centers for Spiritual Living that's trying to working on bringing this awareness and information, to us about the gifts, about American history.
Hi, I'm Vivian Perez, a member of Center for Spiritual Awareness, West Sacramento, California. Welcome to Did You Know American History? In this video, we will educate, celebrate, and share historical information about Latino Americans who made a difference and that have influenced how we live, work, and play in our everyday lives. The term Hispanic or Latino refers to Dominican, Puerto Rican, South or Central American, or other Spanish culture or origin regardless of race. Today, 55 million people of the American population are of Hispanic or Latino origin. Hispanic Heritage Month begins each year on September 15th, the anniversary of independence of 5 Latin American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Celebrations continue with many countries around the world celebrating their independence throughout the 30 days. Originally launched as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon Johnson in 1968, in 1988 it was expanded by President Ronald Reagan and enacted into law. Every American president, Democrat and Republican, has issued proclamations endorsing the theme. Hispanics have had a profound and positive influence on our country through their strong commitment to family, faith, hard work, and service. They have enhanced and shaped our national character with century-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their community.
So am I able to be open to receive the gifts that are there, that are around us? This video reminded me of the time it was part of the Association for Global New Thought, and we created the Peace Train that was doing these whistle stops from L.A. up to Sacramento, and it was for the beginning of the Gandhi, King, and Chavez season for nonviolence. And it was interesting. I found myself sitting next to Dolores Huerta, and I didn't know who she was. It was like, not until she got up on the stage, well, before then, but it came to me, here is the individual who's the co-founder of the United Farm Workers, co-founder with Cesar Chavez, who we're celebrating this whole thing. I'm sitting next to the equal of the creation, and I didn't even know that. And it just opened my eyes to the realization that there are so many blessings and gifts around us. And, in the Latino, we probably all can tell this great clothes designer from Puerto Rico who's designed clothes for all the first ladies for years and years, right? Oscar de la Renta, the influence in our world. But and do you realize we have our first Latino individual sitting on the Supreme Court right now? That's right. You got that? Sonia Samir. It's like, all of a sudden, are we able to open up and say, you know what? I am no longer afraid of what it is I don't know. I'm no longer afraid to go into the darkness, and the tower of the wolf that is going to rise within my consciousness is now open to the gifts that are available. Because as I begin to drop my mind that says, look at this difference and look at that difference, I begin to recognize, look at this similarity, look at that similarity, and it's God that is residing at the heart and the soul of all people. And the religions, Christianity, and the mystical part talks about surrendering to God, where the Hindus and the Taoists talk about merging with the true self beyond one's identity. The Buddhists talk about the emptiness and no self. But if you get rid of like the words or the dogmas or the creeds, they're all talking about going into that void. They're talking about going into that space where it all comes from. It's all spirit. We all come from that place and we all return to that place. Right? We all come from the void and return to the void. We all come from the nothingness and we return to the nothingness. We come into this world, we do a little dance, and like the waves rising out of the ocean, and then they go back into the ocean. What it matters is your expression while you're here. It's not, the form and what it is, that I am able to hoard and hold on to. I mean, it's like things come and they go. Like, where did this week go? I mean, it's like, vroom. The week, where'd this year go? Yeah, it's like, hello. Well, yeah, this year been fast for you? It has for me. Or I'll tell you what happened to the 90s? Yeah, they're gone. Or the 19th century. Or the Roman Empire. Or the Greeks. Or the pharaohs. What I want us to get, it's how you are being when things happen that anger you because you're a human being, that you've been stepped on or done wrong, but there's something inside you that said, I am not going to feed the retribution. I am going to be one who brings a benefit to the wholeness of this world. I'm not going to be one who perpetuates the inhumanity to man or to other human beings because I don't understand or I am anxious or I'm now living in fear. But you know what? I'm going to feel that presence of God. I'm going to go beyond the initial feeding from the media or the headlines on this is how I'm supposed to be, because to understand the true reality, you've got to look beyond the net of your own thoughts and impressions and desires, because that net is made up of the inner and the outer, the right, the wrong. And to be able to see that true reality, one has to step beyond it. And it's not hard. It's a net. It's filled with holes, for heaven's sake. You got to be willing to let go of your position or your desire, because we get at a very young age, we learn to defend our possessions and our positions and what we're professing, what we profess, what we possess, and any other P's I could come up with in this moment. We learned at a young age. Mark, if you want to show this slide, you've probably seen this week or last couple weeks. So today, in church, a guy in a dress tries to drown me. And I kid you not, my family just stood there taking pictures. Yeah, but it's deep too, It's like, gosh, this is how I see it. And this is the way it is. And what we get to do is live in the equity of the equilibrium of our consciousness. So if I believe that the world's out to get me, then what I'm going to live in is a world that is out to get me, because God is in and through all things and is manifesting at the level of my belief. If I believe that the world is filled with love and caring and compassion, and that whatever took place is moving us to the next level, then the world I'm going to live in is going to be filled with love, caring, and compassion, and moving us to that next level of loving, the ability to see my brothers and sisters and the unique gifts that they're bringing. If I believe in a world that is filled with clients, I'm going to have a world filled with clients. If I believe in a world of scarcity and not enough, then I'm going to be experiencing the constriction and the difficulty of that consciousness, because the world responds, life responds. Neville Goddard, he a wonderful contemporary of Ernest Holmes, he said, when you can believe in your assumptions, then you can sit back and watch the world perform. It is. There is an honest response to where you're really at. But how honest are you in the world where you walk? Well, I'm pretty honest. There's not pretty honest, You're honest or you're not. Well, it's pretty clear. No, I mean, you're either honest or you're not. And there's this wonderful question you can work with your children. You ask yourself too. But can your honesty stand up to public scrutiny? And I can remember the question that was asked as a child, or a conversation that was created by the story of 20 monks and one nun were sitting in the teaching room for their retreat or their extended time to learn from the master teacher. And even though the nun's hair was shaven and her clothes were plain, it was pretty clear that she was, quite attractive. And many of the guys fell in love with her, which is absolute taboo. No, you just don't do that in monasteries. And one guy actually wrote her this love note, kind of anonymous, and she didn't respond to it. But the next day, after the master teacher did the teachings, she stood up in the group and said that I received this love letter. If you really love me, would you stand and embrace me now? So what would you do? How honest are you in the midst of public scrutiny? That's right. Are you able to stand up and show your love when it's not cool? Are you able to stand up and speak your truth when the people are filled with anger and revenge and hate and let's attack and get even? Are you able to stand and say, you know what, there's a spiritual principle here called peace and love that needs to prevail. And you know what, I sure don't feel it going on inside of me, but what I know through my spiritual teachings and trainings and meditations is kindness matters. Caring is what needs to be expressed. Understanding needs to be expressed here. And I need to be honest and standing in this when everybody else is ready to take up the big guns and do the attack and say, you can't do this to me anymore. All of a sudden, am I able to stand in that place of knowing that even though the situation is looking one way, because this is how it's been fed to me to be seen, that doesn't mean it is the only way. There is this twin tower of possibilities, and which one am I going to feed inside of myself? Am I going to go with the light, or am I going to go with the destruction? The choice comes down to you, because we're living in a world where there is enough. We're living in a world where there are answers. We're living in a world right now where I've read or I understand our grain elevators and silos, there's enough, grains to feed the hungry of this world. My understanding is that there is enough power now with the renewable energy and the water with desalinization, and there are millions that are dying of sicknesses where the cures are sitting on the shelf. And so this world, it doesn't need more food, more oil. What it needs is more love, more caring, less greed, greater compassion, and a willingness for individuals to stand up honestly and speak the truth. And say, which wolf are you feeding? Which tower is going to rise in your life? You are the one who gets to decide. We've got going on right now, or last month when I was in Montana, I spoke, and a couple girls from the congregation, Montana, said, hey, we're going up to North Dakota. They're doing the pipelines trying to go through the property there, and we need to take a stance. We need some help. Anybody can join us up there. And I hadn't even heard of anything at that point. And all of a sudden it began to gain momentum, but it didn't really get news at first. All you got were up there on this Indian nation, there's more nations that are showing up. There are more tribes that are showing up. And now dogs are biting people and there's pepper spray. Remember, that's what we knew about the conflict that was going on there. It was only recently that there was a shift in the consciousness and realized that more nations of our first people showed up and raised their flags in solidarity than ever and said, you know what? You have taken and taken and taken from us for 500 years. Please, not again. And all of a sudden, the pipeline, the ones with the funding, the ones who can do battle in the courts, all of a sudden say, no, we are going, they're desecrating the sacred grounds, the burial grounds, and we are going to run the pipeline under the Missouri River. Remember this last year when there was the oil spill in Yellowstone National Park and it was horrendous? Or the year before in Montana where the rivers were destroyed and the fish are still dead. They're saying you can't do this to us anymore. And the people say, yes, we do. We have the order. But what had happened is there is a new meme. There is a new consciousness that is standing with Standing Rock, Sioux Nation, and saying, you know what? We have got to care more about our water and our environment and the people than we do about the oil and the money that can be exploited from this land. It's got to stop. And because of this collective push, it pushed beyond the 5 or 6 controlling corporations of the media to the people's voice was heard, and our nation is now standing up. And this week in the courts, they said, put a stop to it until we evaluate it to a different place. And as a result, the chief said, you know what we do? We're about peace and prayer here. Thousands of the indigenous people lined up along the pipeline, sat down and just did prayer and said, you know what? Prayer and peace will prevail here. That this will be a resounding testimony to a nonviolent approach to expressing what is right here. It's not sending toxic fracked oil underneath our rivers and across 4 states, but it's the people saying, you know what? It's time for this to stop. This is ours. This is ours, not those who can pay the most for it, but it's all of ours to enjoy the fresh air, the climate, and the good that is here. Because we are living in a world where there is already enough of the grains and the foods and the oils and things like that. But what are we going to do with it? And I get that it is... It can create controversy, but I'll tell you what... It's time for us to not be confused or mistakenly confused that taking a principled stand is an issue for social justice and human justice, and that it's not a political position. Don't be mistaken to think that the principles stand for an issue of justice and human dignity is a political issue. It's not. It's not. Though it will be tied at the hips by the media and the politicians to move groups of voters. But human dignity, human rights is not a political issue. It is a spiritual issue where we get to stand and say, you know what? What's right here? How is spirit to express here? Am I willing to stand in the confrontation of what is going on against the big boys with the big guns and come up and say, what I'm going to feed here is peace. What I'm going to feed here is a truth. And I get it's scary. I don't want to sound flippant. I get that it is scary to stand up when the confusion of the tension of positions shows up in the family dynamics or at work or with friends. But you know, you have the other option of doing nothing, which I'm sad to say I've seen too many ministers, not because they don't want to offend, they don't want to sound too political, but I'll tell you what, there is no option in my heart and soul that I must stop and step into messy situations and speak what seems to be that truth that supports the human dignity and the human rights of individuals, and recognize that, you know what, it's going to be uncomfortable to take on the bullies, to take on the isms of this world and say this is the way it is. But I'll tell you what, then you end up with bigger things trying to get your attention, like bringing down towers that say, hey, pay attention, there's a greater something that needs to be understood here, because hatred is not the natural state of the human being. It is love, it is caring, it is compassion, and it is essential that we begin to take a look at what is driving me. James Thurber, an American cartoonist, said, hey, you should have a desire before you die to find out what you're running from, you're running to, and why. Because I'll tell you what, it's all going to lead you back to the void. It's going to lead you back to that emptiness. It's going to lead you back to spirit, and recognize that that spirit is the essence from which we all come, that we all are, that it is our brothers and sisters in our neighborhood, in our nation, and upon this planet. And we're all going to return someday to that collective ocean of consciousness, which is spirit. But in the meantime, we're moving through this world, and can I stay conscious of my connection with the infinite presence of God, and come from a place of love, and come from a place of compassion, come from a place of caring, and let go of the judgments, and let go of the fear. And when something inside me is triggered, am I brave enough to go into it and take a look at those dark recesses of my being and saying, what is going on there? Because I don't want to compartmentalize and say, just don't go there and just don't deal with it, just don't talk about it. No, I want to be open, because the presence of God is everywhere, and I've got to be willing to talk about and explore every aspect of my being, because God is there in the most horrific and scariest moments. But the more I come to recognize the light in all aspects of my life, I have so much more to bring to the world. And so I want to end with one last reading. It's kind of a poem It's from September, it's about September 11th of 2001. It was written by Stacy Randall. I don't know if it's famous or not. It's the first I've seen it, but it got me thinking. It's about a minute and a half, so relax. You say you will never forget where you were when you heard the news on September 11th of 2001. Neither will I. I was on the 110th floor in a smoke-filled room with a man who called his wife to say goodbye. I held his finger steady as he dialed. I gave him the peace to say, honey, I'm not going to make it, but it's okay. I'm ready to go. I was with his wife when he called as she fed breakfast to their children, and I held her up as she tried to understand his words, as she realized he really wasn't coming home that night. I was in the stairwell of the 23rd floor when a woman cried out to me for help for the very first time in her life. I've been knocking on that door of her heart for 50 years, I said. Of course, I'll show you the way home. Only believe in me now. I was at the base of the building with the priest ministering to the injured and the devastated souls. And I took him home to tend to his flock in heaven. He heard my voice and answered. I was on all four of those planes in every seat, every prayer. I was with the crew as they were overtaken. I was in every heart of the believers there, comforting and assuring them that their faith has saved them. I was in Texas, Kansas, London. I was everywhere. I was standing next to you when you heard the terrible news. Did you sense me? I want you to know that I saw every face, and I knew every name, though not all know me. Some met me for the first time on the 86th floor. Some sought me with the very last breath. Some couldn't hear me calling to them through the smoke and the flames. Come to me, this way. Take my hand. Some had never heard my voice before, and few chose for the final time to ignore me. But I was there. I did not place you in the tower that day, and you may not know why, but I do. However, if you were there in that explosive moment in time, would you have reached for me? September 11th, 2001 was not the end of a journey for you. But someday your journey will end, and I will be there for you as well. So seek me now while I may be found. Then, at any moment, you will know you are all ready to go, and I will be in the stairwell of your final moments. Remember, I love you. God. Thank you. Thank you.
Such a long way home from where you have been. And what will it take to bring you back again? And all your searching's brought you to this place. You cry for mercy and you long for grace. Feel the love, feel the light. Won't you come in from the cold? 'Cause all are welcome here. Feel the joy, feel the peace, and the comfort of home. 'Cause all are welcome Yes, all are welcome here. Behold the love. Behold the light in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. In your mind, in your heart, in your soul. In your mind, in your heart, in your soul. And all your searchings brought you to this place. You cry for mercy and you long for grace. Feel the love, feel the light. Won't you come in from the cold? 'Cause all are welcome here. Feel the joy, feel the peace, and the comfort of home. 'Cause all are welcome here. Yes, all are welcome here. Here.
All Are Welcome Here, from the album Path of Light, was co-written by Peggy Lebo and Reverend Christian Sorensen. It's available at www.peggylebo.com.